A reminder, the session is being recorded, so it will be available on our Dress for Success community page after the event. We are thrilled to have Candice here to be with us. She works at the University of Notre Dame and actually helped volunteered with us last year and was interested in getting involved in some other things. So I reached out to her. So we're excited to have her today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Candice.
Great, thank you. Glad to be here to talk a little bit more about communication and kind of owning who you are and how you communicate and kind of being assertive. And a little background on me. My name is Candice. I work as an employee experience specialist in human resources at Notre Dame. My background includes roles that are anything from talent and onboarding, inside sales, administrative support. I've done a lot of different things, but for the last 3 years, I've been an employee experience specialist, supporting our managers and employees, kind of coaching them on how to solve problems, conflicts, talk to each other. So communication is really kind of the cornerstone of what I do. So hopefully I can pass along some of the things that I've learned over the years to all of you. So we're going to focus on just a couple of specific things today because communication is really broad and we could talk a lot about it. So we're going to look at exploring some confidence barriers so that we can bring awareness to what's holding us back from communicating more powerfully. We're going to learn some language that we can swap out in our everyday conversations and hopefully take away some tools that we can use in everyday life. So without further ado, we'll start with the confidence barriers. Does anybody have an idea of what might be a confidence barrier for you? Something that keeps you from being confident in whether that's a conversation, speaking up in a meeting, or sharing your knowledge or expertise?
If I don't know what I'm talking about, if I'm not well informed about something, that can for sure be a barrier.
Yeah, if I'm unfamiliar with something, my confidence is a little less.
Yes, the unknown. Exactly.
Yeah,
So
and I was going to say for me, it's really just how do I feel? What's my comfort level in the room that I'm in and who I'm surrounded by?
mhm, all very, very valid. Um, so let's take a look. I've identified four, and these are just the four from my experience that I've seen the most. So there are far more than this, and we could go really deep into some of this, but I kind of wanted to just give high level, like just some ideas of what might be holding you back. So the first one I'm going to start with is imposter syndrome. So it's, I can click the slide. So that nagging internal voice that says you're not qualified or you're a fraud or you can't do this. So I'll give you an example of this. This showed up today as I'm preparing for this workshop. I've run through this, I can't tell you how many times, and I still have that voice in my head going, why did Diana pick you to do this? How are you qualified, right? Surely there's more people better qualified to give a presentation like this. You don't know what you're talking about. And if you doubt yourself, how can you talk to other people about confidence? Classic imposter syndrome. My inner voice is saying I'm a fraud, I'm not qualified. And there's a real fear in that somebody's going to call me out on that you don't know what you're talking about. But the reality is that I have a career's worth of experience and education to back up my knowledge. And as I said, as part of my HR role, this is what I do for a living, is to teach people how to talk to each other. So it's a real thing, right? Like there is that critic that shows up as imposter syndrome and makes you think you can't do it, but you really can. And women actually tend to experience higher levels of imposter syndrome. Often men's successes are tied to their ability, but women's they get connected to effort or luck for whatever reason. I came across an article from, I think it was like early mid 2000s. It was in Forbes, and it had a statistic that really made me kind of think about how I approach things. It said that men apply for a job when they've met 60% of the qualifications, but a woman doesn't apply unless she's met 100% of the qualifications. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone through a job posting and got to something and I'm like, oh, I don't have that. And then I just stopped looking. So it's definitely a real thing. There's also another perspective when it comes to imposter syndrome. Some people think that it doesn't really exist at all, but it's just kind of a label that we put on a problem. And that problem is kind of systemic workplace culture and bias that we're labeling as a syndrome in a person, something innate, but really it's culture. Regardless of which camp you're in, it's still an issue and really good to be aware of that that voice might be lying to you in your head. Another barrier is tying your value to perfection. How many of us always strive to be perfect and are afraid of making a mistake? I know I am. But the same as we talked about with imposter syndrome, women are often taught that their value is earned and it's not inherent. So think about when you were little, were you encouraged to be good, quiet, helpful? Um, and then you take that as an adult and you translate it into, well, I guess I'm doing a good job if I'm keeping quiet, doing what's expected of me, and I don't make any mistakes. So then you add another layer in now with that whole digital comparison, right? You see everything on social media, all these seemingly confident women juggling motherhood, a career, being a media or social media influencer, keeping their house clean, doing all the fun things with their kids. I don't have the bandwidth to keep all of those balls in the air. I don't know about anybody else, but like I look at her and I feel like I'm a failure because I can't keep all of it going. I can't do it all. And that's just really not the case, right? We don't have to do everything perfectly as long as we're doing the things that matter to us. The third one, gender bias in the workplace. I actually learned a new term while preparing for this workshop. I was doing a little bit of research, and there is a word called heap eating. So hepeating, heap eating. And it means that basically when a woman comes up with an idea, she presents it and nothing happens. Short time later, a man presents the same idea and it's received and he gets all the credit, even though it wasn't really his idea originally. So women are often overlooked and quieted when they have ideas, and this can lead to women giving up on trying to be heard. So I'll give you a real life example. I worked in a manufacturing company before coming to Notre Dame, and I was really good at my job as an administrative assistant and was promoted to inside sales. I did really great at that job, and my boss decided that he wanted me to train with one of our outside salesmen because he thought I could bring value there too. Well, the outside salesman wanted nothing to do with a woman in his space. So that was so bad that we would go to customers and he would introduce me as the secretary. It was really demeaning.
Oh
It
my
destroyed my
God.
credit with the customer and it made it impossible to succeed in my job. And when I talked to my boss about it, he said, "Oh, he's old school and it's just his style." That was the moment I started looking for a new job, and I ended up at Notre Dame about 2 months later. And then there's the fourth one. So that kind of leads us to the fourth barrier, fear of being labeled. If you speak up or you assert yourself, you could be perceived as bossy or aggressive. Interrupting a conversation to interject your ideas could be perceived as rude. But when men interrupt, it's looked at as passionate, and when they speak up, it's expected, and it's kind of seen as a sign of strength coming from them. So those are the four barriers that I kind of came up with that I've seen the most and have experience with. Does anybody connect with one of these more than the others, or have you had any experience with any of them that you'd like to share?
I feel like I've had experience with all of them at some point in time.
Heard.
Yeah, I agree with that, Teresa.
Yeah, the gender bias, I for sure experienced that as well. Even not even just ideas, but like I had a question one time. I was in a meeting with an executive leadership team and all males. I was the only female. And I asked a question and they made me feel like I was stupid for asking the question, like, oh, don't you know, blah, blah, blah. And then of course, there was a lot of mansplaining, like, and I'm like, no, 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 I understand this. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. And then not 2 minutes later, somebody else at the table had the same question. It was phrased slightly differently, but of course, like there was no attempt to, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was asking the same question. And now they're taking that question seriously and like, oh yeah, that's really that's really interesting. We really need to think about that. I'm like, it's crazy. And then of course
Yeah. Oh,
the
sorry, go ahead.
perfection thing as well is also, yeah, that's always really, um, really difficult. Like before, when you asked about this, and I said, if I feel like I don't have the information, I might have a lot of experience and a lot of information enough to have, an opinion, but I might, because like just in case I have something wrong or mistaken, like I don't, I might opt out. Anyway, sorry. Someone
No,
else.
good. That's great. I think the perfectionism thing, I thought that that was really me and the way that I was raised. Like I thought it came from my mother for a really long time, and until I started networking and talking with other women, and I found that it's common. And then doing a little research on it, there are statistics to back it up. It really is a real thing. Anybody else want to share?
I was just going to say, like, I think the fear of being labeled, like, that happens on a daily basis. So if you are a woman and in any way, shape, or form, you are just maybe standing up for yourself for a comment that was made, like being aggressive and being assertive are two very completely indifferent things. But somehow when you're female, you get labeled as being aggressive when you're being assertive. So whether it's just trying to clarify your point, so if something that you're saying is being taken out of context and you're trying to shift the conversation around to bring understanding to your point, that can be seen as also being aggressive when really it's just being assertive. You're just trying to communicate.
Right. And sometimes you have to communicate in those clear and direct terms in order to get your point across. So
Right.
totally get that. The other label I think we get a lot is emotional. If you're passionate about something, you're labeled as emotional because you're a woman, and a man would be labeled as passionate. And like those also are two very different things. And so the struggle is real. There are so
Yeah.
many. Okay. So thank you
And
for
I would
sharing.
just
Oh,
add to
yeah.
that, Candace, just real quick,
Yeah.
because Teresa and I have worked together in varying capacities for many, many, many years. So without dating ourselves,
Yes.
I will just say that that has been going on for a very long time. I mean, I can remember having this conversation with female supervisors that I've had in the past, probably 30 years ago. I mean, this just
Mhm.
hasn't changed. It's just, frustrating, very, very frustrating. But yeah, the
Mhm.
struggle is very real and it just continues to be that same daily struggle. So,
Mhm.
Yeah. Not sure how to break it. Unfortunately, I think all we can do is keep communicating in a way that, we feel confident in and move forward, because we're not going to change the dynamic unless we keep pushing forward with the way that we communicate and being assertive. Okay. So, let's move on to quiet the critic. What are some things that you can do when that critic is loud and shows up? So here's a couple of things. First one, stop comparing yourselves to others. If you're comparing, you're not focusing on yourself and your own growth. So, and knowing who you are really does project confidence, believe it or not. Um, I know this one's probably the hardest, especially with social media right now, and we're constantly comparing to what someone else has or what they're doing or what they're wearing. But keep in mind that you only see the best of someone in their social media posts and reels. You don't see their bad days or their self-doubt or, all the dark pieces. And that applies to coworkers too. So you don't see what they take home with them at night. You see what they're bringing to work, but you don't see what they go home to. And I'll tell you, so for myself, for Lent, I've given up social media, and it has been one of the most rewarding things I have done for myself in a really long time. A really good time of reflection to take a look at myself, realign with who I am, the person I want to be, not based on what an influencer says I should be. And it's quieted some of the voices in my head, and I'm honestly not sure I'm going back. So, highly recommend a fast from social media. And of course, I have to show to show some respect to Mr. Rogers. So as a child, I watched Mr. Rogers all the time. And one of his quotes is kind of embedded in my brain, and it fits really well with this. He said, "There's no person in the whole wide world like you, and I like you just the way you are." It's funny that it sticks. And actually, I had said it to my husband. I said there was a quote that I want to put in this, and he actually rattled it off. So I knew I had one of the good ones. You can also focus on learning instead of perfection. So at Notre Dame, our VP of Human Resources, Heather Christopherson, has coined the phrase with our team, do, learn, do. So it's taken off and it's really affected the way that I work. And it's just saying that it's okay to try something. And if it doesn't work, you learn from it and you use that to try again. You might do, learn, do once, or you might do, learn, do a lot of times before you get it right. But it's okay as long as you're continuing to learn and grow and do better. That mentality is really kind of taken off in HR, and it's changed the way that I approach things. I feel less like I have to have a perfect answer or perfect solution to something right off the bat. It's just given me more perspective, I guess, on how I work, better perspective. So another thing you can do is some self-inventory to figure out what those triggers are for your inner critic to show up. When do you doubt yourself the most? Is it public speaking? Maybe it's a task that you do when you're talking to your boss. If you figure out what those triggers are, you can anticipate when your critic's going to be loud. Oops, I'm so sorry. And prepare yourself. Sorry. So some of the things that you can do to prepare yourself, write down notes before you have a conversation, send an email ahead of a meeting with your boss, kind of outlining what you want to talk about. Maybe practice your public speaking in front of friends and coworkers and ask for feedback. Really just anything to get ahead and silence that inner critic. My inner critic shows up the loudest when I'm talking to leaders. It tells me that I'm not qualified to coach them or help them lead and care for their people because I haven't been a leader directly myself. So the last point is to take that inner critic to court. And what I mean by this, and it sounds silly, but take the situation you're doubting yourself on and pretend you're being taken to court for fraud in that area. Your inner critic's the prosecutor, and you're the defense attorney for yourself. What evidence would you gather to defend yourself? Make your case. So this is going to show you that you're qualified, that you have the skills, and that you're not a fraud. Sometimes we just need to build our own case in order to be able to see what we bring. So when my critic shows up, I write down my defense to the claim that I'm not qualified to coach leaders. The evidence I bring is a degree in organizational leadership, years assisting senior executives in day-to-day type work, professional development classes, and 3 years working in HR. So I've built my case, and the critic has to rest his because he can't argue with my points. So those are just a couple of ways. I'm sure there are more out there, but these are just things that I've learned to do throughout the years in order to kind of quiet that inner critic. Is there something that resonates with you from some of these or something that you would be more willing to try?
I like that last one you just talked about, taking your inner critic to court. I think that's good. I like that.
Thanks. I came up with the idea and I asked ChatGPT to make or a Gemini to make an image for me, and it told me that my idea was brilliant or something like that. Like,
More
oh,
proof.
win, I'm done for the day.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, were you
No, go
moving
ahead.
on or
Do you
are
want me to go
you
back?
are you moving on or?
No, I can, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say really very quickly, I like your slide here where it says identify triggers or pain points. Specifically the triggers. I agree that's a great idea. If we don't know what we're dealing with, how can we deal with it?
Right. Oh,
Especially in the workplace. So I think that is a fantastic idea.
Um, I also really like the idea of, I know you said like, oh, this sounds silly, but like really building the case. I realized, so I started my own business a few years ago, and I was, you know, you wrestle sometimes with like these imposter syndrome type things, but I was talking with my husband as I was doing my taxes, and I mean, I was sitting here faced with like evidence before me, like all of the 1099s I collected from all the work that I did with, so many organizations last year, and just how much my business has grown and how many people I worked with, and, organizations I was able to impact. And when you are faced with those like cold hard facts, it really does help kind of quiet the doubts and those other voices. So I've had an experience recently where I know that to be true. Like, and sometimes we just forget, we set something aside and we're just moving forward. And I do think it's important to kind of look back and build that case of like, no, I do, I have the right to take up some space in this area. I do have some expertise. I have something of value to offer. So yeah, I do actually think that's a really good strategy.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to take all of that and we're going to move on to some swaps that we can make with language to maybe sound a little bit more powerful or assertive in our communication. And this can be, we'll look at it in an email, we'll look at it in like regular communication, but it can really be used across the board. So the first one, I am guilty of apologizing for things that do not require an apology. I'm really good at starting emails with, sorry to bother you, or sorry, I have a question. And honestly, that can make you act like you're apologizing for existing, kind of like what you said, and Diana, about like not having value to take up the space, right? Like you do have the value to take up the space, so stop saying you're sorry. So when you do this, you're unintentionally telling people that you're a burden or that your ideas or your feelings are. So we want to learn to use a gratitude flip to reframe some of these. So instead of saying something like, I'm sorry I'm late, flip it to say, thank you for waiting for me. If you make a mistake, say something like, thank you for catching that error. And here's another one with sorry, but the gratitude flip doesn't really work with this one. When you say sorry to bother you or sorry to interrupt, take the sorry out and just say, excuse me. Another word that we probably use too much and out of context, just. We say things like, I'm just checking to see if, or I'm just wondering if. We kind of tend to use this to soften or, I don't know, make less harsh our request or our opinion, but we're actually doing ourselves a disservice because it minimizes the request, whatever we're asking for, makes it seem like it's not important. So I would say take the just out. Good rule of thumb is if you can rewrite the sentence and it still makes sense without the word just, leave it out. And another one, maybe. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe we should try. It makes you seem kind of indecisive. So we could say something different like, I recommend, or based on my experience. This next one. I'm so guilty of saying this next one when I'm waiting for the silence to end. Like I add it at the end of a sentence when I express an idea and then I back it up and say, does that make sense? Because I can't sit in the silence. Which makes it sound like I don't have confidence in what I just said, or it makes it sound like, oh, the listener couldn't possibly understand, what I said. So it kind of could come across as condescending depending on the situation. So in this situation, we want to ask things like, what are your thoughts? Or what questions do you have? Or I'd love to hear your reaction. Which is what I think we're trying to achieve when we say, does that make sense? We want to know what their feedback is. But it just makes it sound more confident if we don't question ourselves. Another option is to just sit in the silence, though I know that will never be me. So putting it out there to you. And the last one, I think or I believe. We say like, I think this is the right strategy. But it can make it seem more like an opinion rather than like, I know what I'm talking about. This is the direction we should go. I'm confident this is the direction. I recommend we go with this option. And then there's one more thing that I don't have on the slide, but they're tag questions. So ending statements with isn't it or don't you think? It makes you look like you're looking for validation and kind of demeans that original point that you made. For an example, you can have that report finished by the end of the day, can't you? If I'm the supervisor and I'm asking someone to do that, that's like, can't you? We just want to leave those words off. You just stop, just don't say them. So you would just say, you can have that report finished by end of day. Projects more confidence and doesn't question your authority or what you just said. So those are just a few words, phrases. There are lots more that we probably could take out of the vocabulary, but let's start small because I will tell you that the sorry, since I've been putting this workshop together, I have been so good at taking sorry out of my emails when I send them. So it just that one conscious little swap of a word really does change the tone of your email or conversation. I'll go to the next slide. I kind of put them on a slide so that you could see all of the swap outs. And I have a link to a worksheet in the chat that I put in there that hopefully you can all access. We'll go through some of those to kind of work through how we do the language, but also wanted you to have some of these just for reference going forward if you wanted to look at them. Any questions on those or any reaction to maybe how much you might overuse some of those?
I just sent an email earlier today that I used a couple of those things in one email, and just as one of them, I actually went back and deleted like two of them just to try and there I go, just to take them out, you know.
Yeah, it just becomes habit after a while.
Mm-hmm.
And you can seem polite without adding things like just or trying to soften, right? You can still be polite. It doesn't take any of the softness out of your email. Let me go back to that slide for just a second. I want to make sure. Yep, we did. Okay. Okay, so now let's look at an example of how you might rewrite an email asking for clarification on a meeting time. So using what we just learned about words to swap, Jane's email to Mary, the subject, so sorry. Hi, Mary. I'm so sorry to be a pain, but I think I might have lost the calendar invite for our meeting. I'm probably just overlooking it, but would you mind letting me know where and when we're meeting? I'm so embarrassed to ask again. Just let me know whenever you have a spare second. Best, Jane. Anybody want to take a stab at how we might change that subject line? Because that one already says sorry.
And maybe just like
Or
meeting confirmation.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. The subject should actually say what you are asking, right? Or what you need, what the actual purpose of the email is. Obviously excluding, this is my HR brain, excluding any personal or confidential information because you never know who's going to see that subject line in your email. I'm always conscious sending a manager an email with an employee's name in it. I choose not to. What else is wrong with this email or how else could we reword it? There's so much wrong. There's about a sentence worth of this that I think we probably should keep.
I mean, maybe at the beginning, just started out by just saying, I might have lost the calendar info or taking out for sure the so sorry to be a pain.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. The piece about like admitting that you lost it, you could actually flip it and make it more confirmation. You don't have to look like you're unorganized, right? Looking to verify the dates.
Yeah, that's what I would say was just, I mean, just stating the question, can you
Mhm.
confirm that, the date and or whatever, what was it here that they were looking for, where and when, the location and the time
Yep.
of today's meeting, um,
Yep.
something like that, and just leaving it simple like that.
Hmm. Absolutely. So I will add the refined version. So listen to how much clearer it sounds. Hi, Mary. I'm finalizing my schedule for Tuesday, and I want to confirm the logistics of our upcoming meeting. Could you please verify the start time and location or provide the dial-in link? I want to ensure I have the most up-to-date details on my calendar. Thanks for the quick update. Much shorter, much more concise, and honestly, like what you're trying to say is getting lost in that other email.
Mm-hmm.
Diana, you just said, what was she asking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So the other email is just shorter, more concise. The piece I will say about this. So I took that first email and I put it into Gemini and asked it to rewrite it and use the language swaps. Gemini does not know my voice. I would never type this email the way that it is written, right? So I would say you can use AI to reframe these emails if you're having trouble with it. But my advice would be write your entire email first in your own voice and then give it to the AI and ask it to do whatever you want it to do, whether it's make the word swaps or make it more concise or direct or whatever you need it to do. But then go back and make sure that it still sounds like you after it spits it back out, because this clearly is not me. If you got this email from me, you would know it was not from me. Um,
Yeah, we tend as just people in general, but women, I think in particular, do this a lot to speak in passive voice. So even just saying, can you rephrase this so that the language is more active,
mhm.
is a really helpful prompt to get rid of some of that passive language.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point. I've not tried to put that in there. I'm actually writing myself a note on my little whiteboard right now. I am constantly rewriting emails, especially now that we have AI. It's so readily available and it's so quick and easy, especially because I go back between managers and employees, and it's very different the way, and I'll preface that with I support service style employees, right? So frontline workers. Versus a manager sitting behind a desk. So those are two very different emails and different email styles. So sometimes I know what I want to say and I have it framed and it sounds like, oh, I'm talking to the manager. I need to reframe this. Um, so it's a little more understandable or digestible. But I like the removal of the passive. I'm going to try that and see what happens.
I've noticed I don't know when it started, but it wasn't really that long ago, but on my Google like business account, just as I'm drafting an email, it's starting to make like AI suggestions within
Oh.
the email, kind of underlining phrases to say, you could make this more concise with this, and it'll give you the swap, and you have the option to take the advice or not. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I think, oh yeah, that's a lot more direct. And other
Mhm.
times I'm like, no, that's actually not what I want to say. But it's nice to have, like, it's right there. I don't even have to go into another tool.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to look at that. I think it prompted me to do that um, when I was doing the Gemini for this, but I said no. I wasn't sure what it was gonna do.
Yeah.
So I'll have to check that out. That's a good point. You do have to watch those too, right? Sometimes it makes suggestions and it doesn't sound like you. My husband uses Grammarly and he uses it to a fault. If Grammarly suggests a change, he uses it. And it doesn't sound like him half the time. So
We still need that human discernment.
you really do. AI is great. And
Yeah.
okay, so that's the email example. Now in the chat, there is a document and it has a lot of questions on it that we can use to reframe, or sentences that we can reframe. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and see if I can share the document instead.
I did repost it in the chat as well. So if you missed it
Thank you.
before, you should be able to find it more easily right there at the bottom.
Great. Yeah, let me know if you can't access to. I didn't realize I couldn't drop it in the Zoom chat, so I had to quickly put it in a Google folder. Okay. Let me. Oh, has officially started storming here. Okay. So we can just go through a couple of these. We don't have to do them all. Maybe one or two from each of the, I've got them kind of categorized into, this one is kind of owning your expertise. So the first one says, I'm not 100% sure, but I think we might need to adjust the Q3 projections. What would you change about that? Anyone want to take it?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, obviously this is made up, but if I knew, I would say based on X, Y, and Z, we need to adjust the Q3 projections.
Perfect. How about, I'm no expert, but here's an idea for the marketing rollout. I think that one might be.
I was going to say maybe
Just,
kind of along the same lines as what Diana said, based on my experience or based on my, yeah.
right. Or I recommend this idea for the marketing rollout, right?
Yeah.
Just simple. Let's go down to command the room. I'm sorry. Can I just jump in for a second? I have a thought. I think that one might have a few things wrong with it. Anyone want to take that one?
Well, I know I would probably just chime in and say, hey, I have a thought about this idea, or I have a thought about this situation, or I would like to share a thought I have. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, you could
definitely I
just.
would take out that whole I'm sorry, and can I?
Right. And this is the part where you could use maybe, excuse me, I have something to contribute, or I have a thought, or just say, like exactly like you said it, hey, I have a thought, or I have something to contribute. Yep. I'm guilty of saying that phrase though, that I'm sorry, can I just add to that? I say that often. Some of this is really just creating a lot of awareness for me. So this workshop has been as good for me as it has, you know.
Isn't that always the way?
Um, so how about this one? I just wanted to add a tiny point about the client's feedback.
Can you take out tiny?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
just, we got to take out just.
We are anti-just. Rarely
Justice,
does it have a
yes,
place.
just no. Yeah, I'm struggling because I can see every other version I think of is still using some kind of, something that I know it's not quite right.
Right.
So even just saying because I do use I think a lot. I knew I used just a lot, but having it like going through this, my first thought to change this was to say uh to add in something about I think we should consider this, point about the client's favor, something like that. But it's still just adding a little maybe probably more than what is needed when you have a valid point you want to make that so you don't have to say I think we should consider this client's feedback. You should be able to just say what about the feedback that we heard from the client or something. I mean, but yeah, wow. I'm like, oh my goodness, these are more ingrained than I thought.
They really are. Like I said, this has been like eye-opening for me as far as how I talk and how I communicate. A lot of this I know, but when you start to think about like go into your email and search the word just and see how many times it appears in the things you have sent. It is frightening. So yes, very ingrained in us. It's going to take a lot of effort, which is why I only did a few of these on the slide because it can be overwhelming. My suggestion would be focus on one of those, and we'll get to that. That's my what are we going to do next slide. So let's do just maybe one more so we can hit one in the boundaries and follow-ups. I'm just checking in to see if you had time to sign that document.
I'm laughing because all of these sound like me.
Same.
I literally sent an email to a client earlier this week because I needed to check in on something that I had asked about last week that I'm still waiting for. Just checking in. How's it going? Were you able to speak with your controller about this? Yep.
Yeah, and why are we minimizing our requests, right? They're valid requests. So it could just be as simple as, hi, have you had time to sign that document yet? Sounds just as good.
And with
Just
the
as
boundary,
just.
even I think going a step further to set the expectation of when it's needed. Like the
Yes.
deadline is Friday, or I need it by X time or date.
Yes, that's a good point. We talk about that a lot. That's something I have kind of struggled with is giving people finite deadlines and then I get stressed out when things don't get back to me in a
Yeah.
timely manner. So I've had to really be conscious in this role about giving people deadlines and my expectation.
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay. So we practiced. That was fun. Now what? So on the bottom of that worksheet, the page we were just on, it's not all the way to the bottom because I've kind of copied and pasted that chart that I put in the slide that showed the swaps, like what it would look like. But there is a space in there and it's a place for reflection and commitment. What's one phrase that you're going to commit to dropping this week and what are you going to replace it with? I would love if everyone would you could share the one you're dropping or both. Either way, I'd love to hear them.
I'm dropping the word just because, like I said earlier today, I did it this morning, literally. So I'm really going to be sensitive about that.
Awesome. Love that.
Same.
The just group. Anybody else? Something other than just, maybe? I think the justs have it.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm firmly in the just camp.
Well,
In my
sorry is
opinion,
going to be
it's
next. So
Right,
I will
exactly,
probably be
Diana.
a little bit more aware of that as well. But
Mhm.
there are occasions when I think it's appropriate to apologize, but there are plenty of
Yes.
times when it's used when it's not really necessary. So,
Mhm. Yep, there's definitely a place for it. We should be apologizing for the things that we make a mistake. Well, even with a mistake, I mean, if you know when an apology needs to be issued, right? So there are places for an I'm sorry or I apologize. Um, but it shouldn't be like there was one that I started to write yesterday. An employee reached out to me yesterday and my day was back to back to back, and I did not have time to make the phone call back to him. I started to send him an email letting him know what my availability was for today. And I started to type, I apologize, I don't have any time today. And I think to myself, why am I apologizing? I am working from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. I haven't taken a lunch. Why am I apologizing to this employee for not getting to him? No, I offered him time. It was still a courteous and polite kind email, but I didn't say I was sorry. So there's just a time. I think part of that is like setting expectations with people too. When you're constantly apologizing, they start to view you as maybe not important or maybe as an inconvenience. And I definitely don't want to be perceived that way. So we will be working hard to remove the sorries and the justs. Okay. Well, that is everything that I had to present. Does anybody have any questions or any thoughts about what we talked about today?
I thought that this was just a really great workshop. Oh, see, there I went. But anyway, this was a wonderful workshop. I appreciate your time, absolutely, for preparing this and putting this on for Dress for Success today. Just thank you. It was, like I said, very thought-provoking. So I have some things I need to work on, and I am going to be more mindful, I think, as everyone here today is going to be in our communications.
Great. I love that.
Yeah, I agree with Sherry, and I really like the gratitude flips that you had, that you provided too. I like that, instead of this, say this. So yeah.
And there's time for taking accountability, right? But in those instances where, sorry, I'm late, well, great, but thanks for waiting for me. Flip it to the person. Appreciate them for waiting for you, because you can say you're sorry, but that doesn't help the person. You're offering them for something for being late, an apology.
Well, and to your point about earlier, it with the employer example, it's not that you did anything wrong. You didn't know that this employee was going to have an issue, and so it's not your fault that this day was booked up.
Right.
So, in that sense, it's better to say, rather than saying what we can't do or what we're sorry about, saying what we can do that's actually going to help and be something meaningful moving forward for that person, useful for them.
Positive flips.
Yep. I love a good positive reframe.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
Thank you, Candice.
Yeah, this is
Yes,
really
thank
fun.
you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I have enjoyed spending the hour with you all. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and that it's not storming where you are.
Yeah, well, it's about to be over here. I can see it's getting dark already. But thank you so much, Candice. We really appreciate you. Thank you, ladies, for joining. Just save the date, if you will. We'll have some information out shortly. But our in April, we are starting our spring workshops back in person. So we will be back at the St. Joseph County Public Library in the Community Learning Center. And we'll be meeting Tuesday, the 28th at 11:30 to 1. Lunch is included. And we've got in April, Donna Porter is going to be presenting a workshop called Your Inner Compass, making decisions that align with what matters most. It's really about identifying your own personal values, and then how do we take that and use that to actually help us as we're making important decisions in our lives. So I think it's going to be a really good one. So definitely keep that in mind, and we appreciate your support.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing everyone soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.